Good evening and welcome to the meeting. This is January 10, 2023 business meeting. Can we all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're joined by 6 of our trustees, our superintendent of schools, Dr. Timothy Harney, our assistant superintendent for curriculum instruction, Dr. Theodore Fulton, our interim assistant superintendent, Mr. Luis Frontero, our district legal counsel, Ms. Sophia Tarasi, our district clerk, Ms. Suzanne Benetti, and as always, our student rep, Ms. Emily Denton. There are 2 opportunities for the community to participate during the Board of Ed meeting. The first is just before the board takes up its agenda, and the second follows the disposition of all agenda items. If you would like to speak, please come to the podium, just state your name, and if you're from Bayport or Blue Point, you must be a resident of the school district. If not, you must be voted in by a majority vote of the Board of Education. We ask that you keep those comments to approximately 3 minutes, and as always, for the community's convenience, we live stream each meeting and post it thereafter to board docs. And if you'd like to follow Dr. Harney on Twitter, you can follow him at BBP Soup, and you can follow the school at BBP Schools. At this time, we'd open it up to any community members for any new or old business. Not hearing any. Dr. Harney, how are you tonight?
Very good, Mr. Miller. Thank you very much. First of all, I'd like to, wish everyone a happy new year. Since this is the first time we're seeing you, I hope everyone had a great break and enjoyed themselves and had a happy and a healthy new year. Just a couple of things from my update. Obviously, we had a number of concerts right before the holiday. In case you were unable to make any of those, we do have the jazz concert next week, so come on down for that. I'm going to kind of go to a couple items, and as I'm going through this, I'll ask the board if they have any questions as we're going. One, I just wanted to kind of give a little bit of an update on the lights, and that's why I just wanted to read something that I had here. Basically where we are right now is we're trying to still get SED approval on the lighting and the classroom flooring project. If you remember, we attached the floor project to it so that we could receive some state aid on it. So that is part of there. There are 2 requests for documentation from SED prior to the winter recess. One of them we provided them, and the other is the CEQA determination, which is on tonight. We needed to have a resolution for that, so that's on for tonight. And once we have that, we will get to them. Once we get the approval from them, then we can start to go out and start to look for bids and start to really work on the lights as a project. So that's kind of where we are right now. I'd put that information in your packet, but I wanted to share that also with the community. Any questions related to that? Okay. A couple other things. This is the kind of the time of the year that we start to talk about next year's calendar. It looks like in terms of next year's calendar, there's just a draft out right now. Still waiting as always for Eastern Suffolk BOCES to approve theirs because we do try to build ours around there. What it looks like right now for next year is, looks like school will start for everybody after Labor Day. Which means usually we do 2 superintendent conference days up front, so we would probably do that, and where the students would come that Thursday after Labor Day. And I don't really know I don't have the date off the top of my head, but so we'll do that. Just to keep some things in the back of your mind, next year, for the first time in a number of years, Passover and Easter are split, so there are 2 breaks built into the calendar for that. One around Easter and one around Passover. Still with the idea of snow days. Next year, because of how they did the regents, we end in the middle of the week next year. It'll be Wednesday, and I think it's June 26th is the date, but that would be that. So that's kind of the calendar. We've done, as I said, a rough draft of it, kind of waiting on BOCES. Typically, we have that as a board resolution in February. If I get everything by the June 24th, we'll put it up then. If not, I'll do it for February 7th. Any questions about the calendar? Okay. The next 2 items really have to do with communication. One of the things myself and Ms. Kiefer have been looking into probably for about 18 months is we've been taking a look at some of our communication and the way we deliver it through. Right now, we use a company, which we've been looking to make some changes within that company. So tonight, there's a contract on here for Aptigee, which would take over our communication, which is what I use for when you see it, it comes out as Blackboard Connect to the community members. Also, they would become our new host of our website, so the website would change as well. The contract that you see in front of us gets us about 6 months free, and by doing it at this time, we were also able to get a discount on the startup fees, so we were able to do that. After next year, it actually will become, we believe it'll be at a lesser cost than what we are currently paying for the people that are hosting our website now and the company that is handling our communication. The nice piece about it is that one of the things in it is, a lot of our schools, we use Remind Me and all those, and we have to follow 2D regulations. This company does all that for us. So a lot of the ancillary companies that we've been using as individuals will go away and will be all in one site now, which will be nice. The other piece that I like about it is, for example, anytime there's an emergency situation, it's very difficult to do from our phones, the way that the current company is. This one, it is not, and it would allow us to push out the same message to all the different media platforms all at once. Where currently right now, it's you do one, you do the other, and then you do the other. So that would be an advantage to this as well. So that is something that we have on there for tonight that we're looking forward to. That really would be implemented come July of next year, but we get this time to kind of play around with it. And if we were able to get it up and running, we could actually trial it earlier if we wanted to. But that's something that we're looking at. Along with that, and then I'll take any questions, is we are going to have a district-wide Instagram page and a district-wide Facebook page. Both of them are really just going to be for sharing of information. And also up on the website, we have to kind of help people in terms of protocols for communication. We have a document up on the website that I'm going to put in my letter within the next couple of days, along with the Instagram and the Facebook page, to really kind of guide people. If you have a question or concern about anyone, kind of where do you start out? And then kind of what are the protocols to kind of walk you through it. So we thought that might help people as they're looking for things. So it'll be a document that I'll attach for people as well. So that's kind of my update. I'll take any questions on either one of those.
Not hearing any questions. Thank you so much, Dr. Harney. We'll turn it over to our student rep, Ms. Denton. How are you?
Good, thank you. Good evening, and thank you again for having me. I'd like to open by wishing everyone a Happy New Year. We concluded 2022 with a number of incredible winter concerts performed by our ensembles. The day before winter break, the high school jazz band, jazz choir, and symphonic orchestra visited the 8th grade, 7th grade, and 6th graders during their music periods, as well as the grades 3 through 5 in each of the elementary schools, to perform a selection of winter pieces for them. The district tour made its return for the first time since the winter of 2019. The tour was done in order to promote involvement in the music department and encourage students to take part in or continue with the BBP music program. Regarding the high school in particular, this Wednesday, January 11th, the Wellness Club will be hosting an afternoon of yoga beginning at 2:45 p.m. in the cafeteria. Please see Mrs. Dawson or Mrs. Francesi with any questions. The high school Lost and Found is overflowing with sweatshirts, lunch boxes, water bottles, and more. Students should stop by the cafeteria and see if they can claim any of the items. All of its leftover contents will be donated after school on Friday, January 13th. P.S. I Love You Day is February 10th this year. P.S. I Love You Day is celebrated to shed light on the importance of mental health awareness and decreasing bullying. Community members are encouraged to wear purple to show support and create a supportive environment. Merchandise is being sold this year. There is a QR code available on the high school Instagram to purchase merchandise. Orders placed between January 9th and January 22nd will ship by February 6th. The high school PTSA is holding a Valentine's Day raffle for 18 roses from Bayport Flower House. With a retail value of $129.99, the tickets are $7 each. If the winner lives in BBP, Patchogue, Sayville, Holbrook, or Holtzville, delivery the day before Valentine's Day will be provided. Tickets can be purchased by Venmoing at BBPHS-PTSA. The BBP Booster Club is holding a fundraiser at Hammer and Stain on January 19th. Bring a friend and show school spirit by crafting a wooden sign or door hanger. Sign up online and contact the BBP Booster Club with any questions. Regarding the middle school, congratulations to the National Junior Honor Society on the success of their holiday toiletry drive. They were able to donate thousands of toiletry items to those in need. Head down to the Catbird Seat Art Gallery on Main Street in Sayville any day between January 12th and 17th to view the displayed artwork of some of our BBP students. On January 15th from 1 to 3 p.m., there will be a reception for all of the artists who have their artwork on display. Anyone is welcome to attend. Exciting news for those involved in the middle school music department. This year's middle school musical has been announced. The auditions for Seussical Junior will be held on February 13th. On January 27th, the middle school will be holding Career Day for the 7th and 8th grade students. Students will rotate through a variety of different careers, including a canine police officer, chiropractor, physical therapist, coach, small business owners, a pilot, and a radio show host. From the Boomer and Geo show on WFAM, Greg Giannotti will be attending to speak about his career. On February 4th, the middle school robotics team will participate in their qualifier in Huntington. The middle school late winter sports will start on Tuesday, January 17th. And on January 20th and 23rd, the 6th graders will be taking a field trip to the Holocaust Museum and Tolerance Center in Nassau County. As for Blue Point Elementary, both students and faculty are starting this year by finding their one word to describe their 2023 year. And on Wednesday, January 11th, the entire building will celebrate the 80th day of school by wearing 80s attire. They have been counting down the days on Twitter with pictures of faculty and staff who were born in the 80s. Students will play Guess the Faculty and Staff Member, finish the 80s song lyrics, and finish the famous movie quotes from the 80s. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Stanton. I would just say, who was able to get Mr. Giannotti? Who has the relationship to get him here?
I don't know. That would be a question for Mr. Andruskowitz.
All right. Someone's got some insight.
One of our staff members went to school with him.
Uh, Perfect. I know he's a Bellport grad. And I just want to say, Ms. Denton, I was at one of the concerts, and I know you did a solo, so I want to say how great that was, and I know how scary that must have been up here. So,
Thank you.
Congrats on that.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll turn it over to Dr. Fulton for our updated academic report.
Thank you this evening. I'm very excited to go in front of Mr. Frontario because we know how exciting the budget presentations are. So this is an update to our presentation that we began in September. If you remember, in September we had said that the 3 through 8 assessment data wasn't available from the state, and I had also promised the board that I would give an update as it relates to ESSA and ESSA accountability. So our purpose of our presentation is we're going to review the ESSA requirements and designations, which is important, because we have designations for the school year, and also talk about our performance on the 3 through 8 state assessments. For our district goals, this falls under learning and assessment for learning for our students. So remember, for the ESSA restart for 22-23, the state plans had to be approved by the U.S. Department of Education. New York State asked for a waiver and applied for multiple waivers with regards to ESSA requirements, which the federal government denied. As a result, New York State did get approved an ESSA plan. There are modifications to some of New York's indicators and things have to be measured, and we'll go through that in this presentation. The changes for the plan, though, are only for the determinations from last school year's data and for this school year, and that means we anticipate next year going back to the original ESSA plan that was approved by the federal government prior to COVID. So the different levels of ESSA we get reviewed, and we get designations for student academic achievement, student growth, academic progress, graduation rates, English language proficiency, chronic absenteeism, and college and career and civic readiness. Some of these indicators won't apply for this update because we're dealing with specifically the 3 through 8 testing program. So in the past for ESSA, if you could be a school in good standing, you could be a recognition school, which is the highest performing. You could be a district or school for targeted school improvement or comprehensive support and improvement. And those 4 designations apply to buildings and for school districts as a whole. They've made some changes in terminology to where now a school in good standing is now considered a school with local support. Either way, it means no outside intervention. So as we relate the new designations, again, so the subgroups appealed. In the past, before COVID, Sylvan Elementary School, the subgroup student with disabilities, and Blue Point Elementary School, economically disadvantaged students, were appealed in the 1920 school year, which the appeal was upheld, and we were told we were in good standing. So accountability statuses for 22-23. Really, the big changes is that good standing schools are now known as local support and improvement schools, LSIs, and that's what we are, which we'll go through. And then definitions are unchanged for schools and districts that are not identified under the different classifications that are available under the state. Intents and purposes from a continuum standpoint is the New York State looks to identify the bottom 10% schools, and then if you are a targeted school, it means improvement plan. Comprehensive means you're going to be getting access to funds and higher level intervention coming from the state level. So accountability indicators, these are just some terms to keep an eye on. The changes that were made for this school year and this school year only, academic progress and growth is not being measured, and for high school, academic progress and career and college readiness is not being measured. These are the indicators that are not being measured and reviewed for last year's data for this year's accountability status. Some additional amendments is, and this is just very specific with regards to how they manage their algorithm. What is important to us is, and we're going to get this into a data in a later slide, is we have a very high non-participation rate. This year, the requirement to implement a participation rate improvement plan was waived. We are required to do an improvement plan. When I show you the data in later slides, you'll see why we're required to do an improvement plan. But New York State this year, or for us, any district, they did waive that as we're coming out of COVID. But that requirement will return, and we will have to do an improvement plan to be able to increase our rate of participation in our 3 through 8 testing program. So if we take a look here for a percentage of exam refusals for the 21-22 school year, last school year we were at 66%, which was a slight decrease from prior years, but statistically speaking, we are still extremely high. And when we compare in the future slides, we're very high in the state and not just Long Island. And you can see subtle differences between the two subject areas. So when you take a look at 714 districts in the state, we are 699th with exam participation. This puts us we are in the top non-participation districts within New York State. So obviously, attention's on us. The spotlight is on us. It's about as high as you can get. We're 113th on 125 in Long Island, and we're 58th out of 69 in Suffolk County. And some of those districts that have higher rates are smaller districts than we are. But the 619 out of 714 really kind of puts it in perspective with how many of our students do not take or do not participate in the 3 through 8 testing program. The state mandated participation rate improvement plan, which I had referenced to you, these are things that were were submitted to the state that we didn't have to implement because it's been waived, but we would have to survey why don't parents not choose their children not to participate, and then we would have to show specific action steps based off of those surveying data as to show that we're making attempts and actually having results where more of our students participate in the exam. This takes time, this takes resources, and again, it's something that will be, most certainly I predict, we will have to do next year. Our accountability status for BBP, again, is the designation subgroups were in good standing. Again, I remind everyone again that in the past that we've had, so they have released the designations. The state did do a memo out, so it's not necessarily in this slide. So in the most recent designations, we are, remember, it's not in good standing anymore. We're now that local support, the new designation, but we do have one subgroup. We're in good standing with potential to have a different rating for next year. So it means that we're still in good standing, but if the result trends continue, then we could be considered a targeted school district for that student subgroup. And that's something that we're keeping an eye on. So that student subgroup is for our Black students participating in the 3 through 8 testing program. It's a group that we only have 22 students in that subgroup reporting, and out of those 22 students, at least 12 of them opted out at least one portion, at least one exam of either ELA or math, which has an impact on the results. So small subgroup, in addition to close to 50% not participating within the exam. So that does impact our rating. So we're still in good standing. We're not targeted, cited, reported, but if that data continues for next year, we potentially would be a subgroup that would be cited for a potential improvement plan. Right. So we are looking to see if that potential, though we're still in good standing, if we're able to appeal it based off the information I shared with the number of our small subgroup to begin with, small denominator, in addition to students not participating. Our accountability status for BBP, remember, as we go through these different levels, it's student performance achievement, student growth, ELL, English language proficiency. They combine the ELA math together, chronic absenteeism level. And remember, for the subgroups assessed, this is important, it's not just the group as a whole. We have groups that based off ethnicity and multiracial, English language learners, economically disadvantaged, students with disabilities, and students with disabilities, all the subgroups that I just mentioned prior. So they really get granular with regards to how your data is reported for your 3 through 8 testing, and you get a rating or designation for each one of those subgroups. So overall, for our 3 through 8 testing program, I have it divided here for ELA and math, and do remember, these results reflect the fact that we have a very high non-participation rate. So what we did is I kept the opt-out rate for each grade and each exam for you, and then in addition, I gave our county rank, the percentage of students that we had 3 and above, and then I compared it to New York State, and then I compared it to Suffolk County, the eastern Suffolk BOCES portion. So as you can see, we're not high, where you would expect with our performance in our high school and our graduation rate and a community of this caliber in our academic program. We're not at the bottom, and these results are directly impacted by the fact that the majority of our students, close to 60 to 70%, depending on the exam, do not take the exam. And as a result, that means our performance and rating and how it's presented in media, all that is based off of an incomplete picture of our students. The one other thing to note, and I have a different color for the Math 8 exams, is that 8th grade algebra performance is not included in the performance calculations. And we have a number of students that are taking 8th grade algebra and are quite successful, so that's why I shared it. We had 56 students take the algebra regents and pass it, but those 56 students do not take the Math 8 assessment. So now when you go back to the prior slide, you can see for our participation rate, only 17 students out of 165 took the Math 8 assessment. So as we're moving forward, just a couple of notes to remind, and I'm going to sound like a broken record, but it's going to be important because it's going to impact the district, especially if we get a subgroup that's identified, and especially if we have to complete mandated improvement plans, which takes time, resources. And again, if we're identified, that gets published publicly, that gets shared in the media, and it creates a picture of the community and the school district, which does not necessarily reflect the academic rigor that we contain in our instructional program. So test non-participation impacts our ratings for subject performance, weighted average, core subject performance. That determines our standing. High participation, non-participation results in implementation of a participation improvement plan. We then would be required to submit improvement plans for targeted buildings and subgroups. And then again, we could be designated or targeted at TSI as a district, a building, and for individual subgroups as a district or individual subgroups within a building. So again, it really can get down to the granular level. You could be identified for one subgroup in one building, but not that same subgroup in another building. So the accountability journey continues. So I open it up to any questions.
Thank you, Dr. Fulton. Any questions from trustees? Ms. Conley?
As always, this information will be up on the website, and then how are we managing it with getting it into the school buildings? So parents have more information that way.
The parents for the information, that'll be something that we can explore and discuss. So obviously, the presentation shared with you, we're going to be having the conversations with building administration. I do have on the calendar a scheduled assessment information nights, and I'll look to visit the local PTA meetings too as well.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask. So
Yeah.
when you're going in to talk about assessments, this information could be paired with that? Is
Yes.
that the plan? Okay.
And it has been in the past. I've traditionally done assessment information nights in the past. not necessarily have been well attended, but I'll continue to do them.
Not really a question, but hats off to the math department for having 4 years running eighth graders 100% passing rate on the algebra regents. That's excellent.
Thank you. Very proud of the efforts of the math department, and there's things that we're looking in with regards to students for pre-algebra, for the 7th grade, and for things that continued enhancements. Mike Savante and our math teachers are constantly looking for ways to best meet the needs of our students. So thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question, another one. Dr. Honey, you said something about an appeal. Can you tell a
Yeah.
little bit more about that?
Yes, so the notice that we received today, so you are literally hearing the most recent information as of 3 hours ago. So we received an notice from state ed, all districts did today, about their accountability and I guess their ratings. So we were told to go into our business portal where all the data is to kind of take a look at where we fell. And then looking at that, we saw that all the buildings themselves were falling within the, I'll use the old term, the good standing is what it was, but now it's called LSI is what it is. And then we did see the one subgroup that there was an area, so I asked Dr. Fulton to kind of do a deeper dive into that now we're talking about the district possibly being identified, the district as a whole, due to us one subgroup, which is really based on, from what he's saying now, is 10 students. So we will share that information. We have basically 2 weeks to put together an appeal on that rating, and that's what we're going to do and see if they, we had done that 3 or 4 years ago because of our
Right.
participation rate, and we were given good standing at that time based on that. So we're going to try that again.
And that was if you remember, the two subgroups that I had referenced from the 18-19 data. The question with this one subgroup is because we've been designated LSI, so which is the old goods, we are in good standing for that subgroup, but they've given the definition of potential, which means that if we have similar data for 2 years in a row, then we'll be designated. So right now I have a question into BOCES, our data, the data person from BOCES, and I have a question up to the New York State Office of Assessment to see, are we allowed to appeal even though we are considered still in good standing? So it's just one of those questions, and we're looking to find out the answer.
Any other questions? Dr. Fulton, thank you so much. Appreciate your time, sir. Mr. Frontario?
Thank you. And this work the same way. Okay, good evening and welcome to our budget workshop number 2 for the development of the 23-24 budget. Oops. This advances it, right? Ted? Does that advances it? I had it upside down. Okay. Duh. Oops, sorry about that. Slideshow. Bingo. Thank you. I had it upside down. No wonder why it didn't work. Anyway, welcome to Budget Workshop number 2. We have quite a few to look forward to. And tonight I'm happy to really have some information to discuss with you. Last year, I had to wait till the second meeting in January to actually make some presentation about the tax cap. And that's really what the focus is going to be tonight, is on the tax cap calculation. And we'll be using that and talking about that. Again, it's preliminary, but we're going to be looking at, that through the whole entire process. And nobody can say through all of the presentations they're going to make that it isn't open and transparent in terms of how we develop the budget in this district. So we have an agenda, district goals, important timeframes, the revenue puzzle, the calculation itself, which I'll walk you through. It's 6th grade math pretty much, looking ahead to the state aid budget and so forth, our 13-year study of budget and tax levies, and next meeting and questions. So here we are, district goals. Again, they're part of every presentation, and they are our guiding principles. That's why we come here every day, and we want to make sure that the Bayport Blue Point Public Schools provides everything for all our students in exemplary fashion. This is our schedule, if you will. As you can see, the arrow points to January 10th. Tonight I'm going to focus in on the tax cap calculation. Again, it's preliminary, but I think it's pretty solid as well, and I'll explain to you how we arrive at that. On the 24th of January, by then we should have a state budget, have some information about, at least a preliminary information about where state aid is going. I hope to have that. On the 24th, I'll also talk about other revenues, fund balance, and other things, so that you have a sense of where the revenue is coming from, how we will be in balance. The meetings in February 7th, 28th, and March 14th and 28th, I will really dissect the budget for you guys and run through it at least once. So you should see it at least once a year and have an idea of the various changes. Okay, and again, in our revenue puzzle, ultimately that will come together as a perfect square. The subject to the tax cap is the tax levy. Obviously, state aid is a big portion of what we do in terms of balancing the budget, our appropriated fund balance, other revenue sources, but of course the largest is tax levy, and is the only one that's subject to the cap. Then the next slides, 8 through 11, I'll illustrate the formula that we followed and some of the calculations and how we got there. It's important to note that for 23-24, the growth factor is 1.0028. That number comes to us in December. It's provided to every district in the state, and it comes from the Office of Real Property Services, and it has to do with anything, changes in our tax rolls, if you will, and it varies from one year to the next. So this is the calculation. Again, I didn't make it up. This is the formula that every district follows in determining what the tax cap will be. So we open with our current year approved levy for 22-23 of $57,468,219. To that, we multiply that growth factor of 1.0028. That gives us a new result. It adds about $200,000 to, as we're developing our base, of $57,629,130. We add any current pilots that we might have, and we have none at the moment. We had a number of years ago. We don't have any at the moment. We might actually have coming on the rolls perhaps, but at the moment there are no payments in lieu of taxes. Those are properties that through the industrial development have made a deal to build a building here or bring a business here that would be tax exempt or pay low taxes. We would be made whole by the payment in lieu of taxes pilots, but we don't have any at the moment. So that brings us to $57,629,130. Again, no change. Less the current capital exclusions. There are certain exclusions we can use when we develop the tax levy cap. One of them, of course, is our capital fund. It's also changes in retirement systems and any torts, but we didn't have any of those. It was all basically capital exclusion. And that $3,208,980, we subtract that from the $57 million to get our actual base, which is $54,420,150. From that, we're going to apply 2%. Now, that isn't official yet, but it's likely to be because it's based on the CPA or 2%, whichever is lower. And we know the CPA right now, CPI, is probably 7 or 8%. So 2% is probably the logical thing that it will default to. And so I'm presenting it based on that. And again, it is preliminary. We should find out maybe in a week or so, or maybe even less, that it's officially 2%. So anyway, we add that 2% to our former base, if you will. We get $55,508,553. And then again, we don't have any pilots to reduce it, and we have no carryover reserves at all, the levy. That's almost impossible to get. So that $55,508,553 is our base. And if we had no exclusions at all, that would be our tax levy next year. But we do have exclusions. The capital exclusion of $4,221,161 is added to that $55 million number. And then when I compare that, $59,729,714, which is what the levy could be, and subtract it from our current levy, we can increase our levy by $2,261,495, or 3.94%. That's supposed to be a 2% tax cap, right? But not really when you think about how the exclusions do impact on the calculation ultimately. So but I'm going to break down how I came up with those numbers. Since you have an idea, I didn't pull them out of the sky. And some of it is judgment and just good faith. Because at some point in time, the controller, and they have done this to districts in the past where I've had to respond and say, show us how you calculated your tax cap. Our auditors do look at it as well, but the comptroller likes to do that every so often, every couple of years. So let me focus in on the capital exclusion. And I'm actually showing more than 1 year here. If you look at the 23-24, we have debt service. Obviously, we don't include the library debt service, and we will be having, and we're expecting to have, a new energy performance contract. And there may be some impact on that. Not a huge impact, but still I need to account for some of it. And I'll show you how I came up with the number 4,653,774. But anyway, debt service, if you have debt service, that does help you in terms of this calculation. And we had an estimated building aid of $1,845,998. That building aid was indicated in November from the state aid runs that we saw. So I subtract that because if you're getting building aid, you can't double count. Those dollars come off. So you take the debt service that you have in existence, you subtract the building aid, and you come up with a total exclusion before local capital of $2,807,876. I'm estimating an actual capital expense. This is real dollars being spent in 23-24 in capital. And it's a conservative estimate. I'll explain to you why in a moment. But we're likely to have a little bit of residual from the lights, because most of it will get done this year. We will have the wellness room, which we will do at the high school, which we probably will have. And then we should have the EPC, the energy performance contract. A lion's share of the expenses will be next year. A good portion of them anyway. $10 million is the energy performance contract. And it's likely that once we borrow the funds, which should come around February, we will start the ordering process, but none of the work should take place until July. And, I'm estimating only $1 million in expenses, but actually it could be a lot higher than that. This is how I came up with the debt service number used in the calculation. If you look at this chart, you'll see that anything in red is discounted and not included. So we have our library bond. That's not ours, okay? We may account for it, but they pay us and it reimburse us for that, if you will. So it isn't really our debt service, it's theirs. And I add up all of the principal and all of the interest. And there is one thing on there you'll notice, energy performance contract new. Right now, when I talk to our financial advisors, they think that it could be a $970,000 initial first payment, principal and interest on the EPC, when it really hits. And there's not necessarily an idea that it might hit in 23-24, at least not the whole thing. So it's good to be conservative and plan for the possibility that we may have some debt service on this new borrowing, and we may not. But again, trying to be conservative and trying to count it in, I think is a fair and a reasonable approach. So when you add up all of the principal amounts, $3,394,405, and the interest amounts of $1,259,000 to $369,000, you come up with $4,653,774. And I'd be happy to share this with the controller if they ever asked, why would I have come up with a number particularly like that? Now here is the expenses, the actual expenses. High school field lighting, I'm assuming there might be some residual or contingency that might fall into July 1, because July 1 begins our new fiscal year for 23-24. The high school wellness room, we well into, I would think, by the construction by then, at least like during that school year for sure. I know Dr. Harney's gotten a lot of donations, and this is what we budgeted in our budget, and we're likely to spend all of that in 23-24. The new energy performance contract, I'm assuming about $1 million. But really, there's a good likelihood that that might be a lot higher $3 million, $4 million, $5 million, because we're going to be boilers, windows, panels and so forth, solar panels and the like, all need to be ordered pretty quickly, but it's likely that some of this stuff will be on hand, and the boilers, the windows, et cetera, in July. And we'll need to be able to do that work in the summer. If I assumed a $4 million expenditure, or added another $4 million to that EPC as a best guess, it moves the needle a lot on our tax cap. It could be 10%. And that's not something likely that the board would be willing to do, is to increase our tax levy by 10%. But that's how this is designed, believe it or not. So I'm being conservative, very conservative, in terms of how the EPC might actually impact on us. So that's how I developed the $1,350,000 of expenditures in capital for next year. It's still subject to possible change if we, I look at some of the other things that might be happening. But for the most part, I think it's pretty reasonable. Again, in terms of looking ahead at state aid, hopefully the governor will come up with a budget that will continue to fully fund our foundation aid. We'd like to see we're a hold harmless district, so we don't see a lot in terms of that, unfortunately. But there are a lot of initiatives that we will probably hear about in the next couple of weeks and months as the governor and Albany try to determine an official budget by April 1st. Again, we hope that we benefit by that, but these are the kinds of things that they're talking about. It isn't just about foundation aid. They have a whole bunch of initiatives that are on the table, and again, we'll probably talk about it more into the future. Again, this is our 13-year budget to tax levy study, and it shows where we have been in terms of budget increases and tax levy. And you can see right now, if we were at a 3.94% tax levy increase, it wouldn't be the highest we've ever had in terms of increase from one year to the next. And again, this is our average, again, pretty straightforward in terms of over a 13-year period. I think very reasonable in terms of budget-to-budget increases and tax levy increases. On the 24th of January, again, we review the tax cap if there's more information that needs to be shared. Update on state aid. Hopefully we have information at that point that we can start to work with. I will update on other revenue projections, reserves, and any other considerations to be added to the 23-24 budget. Questions?
Any trustee questions? Mr. Johnson?
I guess I just want to clarify a few things because it looks like, this is a very confusing thing for a lot of people that they think, why isn't it 2%? Isn't supposed to be 2%?
Exactly.
So your tax growth factor, is that that 1.002, that's a product of tax roll assessments?
Correct.
Some people grieve their taxes.
Who might
they
be
go down.
going on or going off, actually,
Some
and
people-
changes.
Or they build a new house in the community.
Correct.
Or there's swimming pool put in, deck. That's really what, it's an increase.
That would be more assessment, I think, but I think what this really impacts on is properties that are being built, let's say, or, things.
So you're allowed to bring on a higher tax levy because you're bringing in more revenue from other sources.
Right, and that, when I applied that 1.0028, it actually increased our base levy by like $200,000 right off the bat from our approved levy.
So it's not really an increase in people's overall taxes. It just means we can levy the community by an extra $200,000 because there's going to be an additional sources of revenue
Right,
coming onto
okay,
the books.
kind of recognized
So I think
it
it's
that way.
important for, constituents to know that. Also,
And I'll go to
the other part that I think would confuse people is the capital exclusion. So the capital
Yes.
exclusion is all new capital projects that you bring on year to year minus the state aid, correct? In that
Yes,
growth.
exactly. Well, it's your debt service, which luckily we have debt service because it works for us. Our debt service and less our state aid, and then any expenditures, actual expenditures we are expecting to have in good faith in 23-24. And frankly, again, I could put a number there, of 4 million in EPC.
Yeah.
It would bring our tax cap to 10%, and we know we're not going to do that, but you'd have the wherewithal to do it if you
But
wanted to.
they wrote that in there to allow for districts to do capital improvements with that, and that would be to raise that additional revenue through the taxes. So when you vote on a bond, you realize throughout the year in the service, you're gonna be paying a little bit more money in your taxes, correct?
Right.
Okay, so, but I think we also have to be cognizant of the fact that if we do bring it up because the EPC, and we bring it up a lot, that when we have an exclusion that's in the negative in future years. So right now, we're seeing $1.3 million worth of, between the projects we have at lighting, with the EPC, those portions that are coming on the books. If the following year we have nothing, could that actually reduce your tax cap?
Well, yeah,
Below
it could work
2%.
again. If you have none, if I took that out of the equation altogether, yeah, it would hurt us, so to speak.
Yeah, well, it would limit, that's why you see sometimes in communities, it happened a few years ago, where certain districts would actually have a negative tax cap.
Correct.
Would that be the big driver for that?
It could. Not likely, though. If we keep going the way we're going, we'll have projects every year. I mean, actually, if you want to avoid bonds, you need to always have something going on every year.
Because
You
if a
can't
big
avoid-
bond comes off, you could have that negative
Right.
tax cap.
Or as one bond comes off, it's time for possibly a new bond.
Okay.
Because the debt service does work for you on that regard.
So
And it provides you with all the things you needed to do to update your building.
And this is more driving what we can, like when you start looking into the capital exclusion, and correct me if at any point I'm wrong, when we start looking at the capital exclusions, that just allows us it gives us wiggle room within that budget of 3.9%. That doesn't mean that's the actual expenditures we're gonna need, we have to go to 3.9%. If we look at our expenses, we can do that. That allows the formula, the max rate based on all those.
It's a maximum, but and once we decided, if I go through the calculation again or look at any adjustments to our capital expenditures that might change it, that would be your max that you could increase. Doesn't mean you have to. You haven't in a couple of years, but we might want to consider that. First of all, it's not the highest we've ever done. We did 3.99 back a ways ago, and we may need it. We may need to do that. At least we should keep an open mind about it. Any other questions? Thank you. You're welcome.
Any
I
other questions?
hope that it made it as clear as it possibly could.
No, I just had one question. Usually we're conservative, we go higher. You're saying we're being conservative, we're going lower for the energy performance contract with the 1 million. Because you're saying, we don't know, what don't we know?
We're going to spend 10 million is what we're going to have to spend on the energy performance contract. Because that's how much we've been approved to borrow, and which is going to work through all the savings and all the things that they've done over the 3 or 4 years that this thing's been in the works. And finally, it's starting to happen. But, again, if I bring it up 2 million or 3 million, which could be likely, we'll have a tax levy cap of 6%.
No, but what's the total on it?
The total on the energy performance is
Yeah.
10 million for.
In how many years?
Well, if we could get it done in 1 year, 2 years, hopefully we can get it done as quickly as possible. That's the whole idea behind it.
No,
But
I know what you're asking, like.
Like how many years?
Like, for example, you were thinking about the bond, we did it in 4 phases. Oh, the 10 million.
It's 18 years.
It's 18.
The 10 million will be over an 18-year period, I believe. Based on savings and state aid and the whole cash flow calculation. But the expenditures are capital expenditures, and they will be done, much sooner than the payback, which is over 18 years. We're not going to be doing the capital projects over 18 years. We can probably get all of the initiatives that are in the energy performance contract done in 2 years, perhaps 2 or 3 years. So you'll have expenditures, actual expenditures in 23, 24 related to the EPC, and probably 24, 25, and possibly 25, 26.
Lou, is there a benefit of doing it over a couple of years as opposed to it all coming at once?
Well, sure it is, if you can spread it out. But this is supposed to be good faith about what actually you spend in 23, in the given fiscal year. So, I mean, I could average it out, or it could into the future a little bit, because, we may not get it all done right away. And again, it's always going to be a good faith estimate of to what you're actually going to spend. The debt service is very straightforward. It's schedulized. The only thing that we don't know is, will we have a debt service related to this EPC? Right now, in the first draft of the budget, I have $970,000 for that debt service. 530 in principal, 440 in interest. But when I talk to our fiscal advisors and so forth, I think we should try to match that payment up with when we start to see some savings. So I'm being conservative because ultimately I'd probably want to budget a little bit of that, like that interest amount I just showed you, to get to the calculation of debt service. It's just as good faith, and also for planning ahead. That's all. So it wouldn't hit us hard in the following year.
Any other questions? Mr. Frontier, thank you so much.
My
Appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Thank you.
Moving on to consent agenda. Are there any items the board would like to remove from the consent agenda and place on the regular agenda? Not hearing any, can I have a motion to approve consent agenda items F? Good. F, G, H, I, J, and K.
So moved.
Ms. Conley, second
Second.
by Ms. Pigataro. Any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 6-0. Moving on to the regular agenda. Can I have a motion to gratefully accept from the Booster Club a light flight machine valued at about $585?
So moved.
Ms. Conley, second. Ms. Cerrone, any discussion? As always, thank you so much. The Booster Club always does so much for our community and our students, and we're so thankful. So thank you so much to Ms. Karen Costa. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 6-0. Can I have a motion to gratefully accept from the Center of the Worst Workplace Solutions? This is for the Athletic Department Supplies General Fund for $500.
So moved.
Ms. Conley, Mr. Johnson, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you so much for your donation. As always, we appreciate it. 3 quick policies. Can I have a motion to approve the admission of non-resident students, policy 5152? Ms. Cerrone, second. Ms. Pignataro, any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Moving on to regular agenda item number 4. Can I have a motion to approve the first reading of policy 5312.1, school alcohol, drugs, and other controlled substances?
So moved.
Ms. Pignataro, second. Ms. Cerrone, any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Last one of tonight, can I have a motion to approve the first reading of policy 8115, pesticides and pest management? Ms. Cerrone, second. Ms. Pignataro, any discussion? All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? At this time, we'll open up to community members for any new or old business. Not hearing any. Do we have any trustees with any new or old business?
I just wanted to pass on a thank you to Mr. Haas, the high school guidance department, and all of the teachers who were involved in the 9th grade orientation. I heard from incoming 9th grade parents that it was extremely engaging and the teachers were so passionate about their subjects. So the students are excited to come here next year.
Thank you, Ms. Conley. Any other discussion? Not hearing any. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Mr. Johnson, welcome to the board. Mr. Krug, all in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Have a good night, guys. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.